The hurt, the anger has thrown a nobody like me to be part of this temple of democracy. Beating the BJP cabinet minister, think about the pain. If you hear an anxiety, anguish, and pain in my voice, please go back and see those 60,000 people languishing in the relief camp. Don't talk about partition remembrance. Manipur is part of India, and we care for the people of that state. Only then I will accept what is nationalism in our face.
That speech by first-time Member of Parliament Bimol Akoijam is now viral. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. After that speech, the Prime Minister did break his silence on Manipur in the Rajya Sabha. Remember, even his Lok Sabha address was surrounded by opposition members of parliament that had only one chant, Manipur, Manipur. But when Congress Member of Parliament Bimol Akoijam got up to actually deliver that speech, it was midnight. The house was nearly empty. And yet that did not stop him from really wearing his heart on his sleeve. Now that the Prime Minister has spoken, how does the Member of Parliament who first put Manipur back on the national agenda feel? Let's go across to Dr. Bimol Akoijam, Congress Member of Parliament, a JNU Professor turned Neta, someone who referred to himself as a nobody who won his election because of the hurt and anguish in the state. Thank you, Dr. Akoijam. Let me start by asking you, when you were delivering your speech, the fact that you had been given a midnight slot, the fact that the house was nearly empty at that point, did that dispirit you? Did that dishearten you?
Well, I have, something in my life. I tend to accept the thing as it gets unfolded, whatever happens in life, and this is something like a play between destiny and what one can do. I was waiting for my turn right from the afternoon, and it kept on postponing. And by the time it struck around 11:30, I became conscious of the moment and a sense of marginality and the peripherality, and 543 MPs and two of us. And this is opportunity, and maybe they will give us 3 minutes, 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. That was the kind of a concern that I began to sense. But as I said, around 11:30, Nehru's speech, The Tryst with Destiny, came to my mind. And I was aware of the time gap, though we have a one-time zone in this country. There are people who've been asking. I knew that a lot of people are waiting for my speech back home. It must almost be like 1:30 to 2 in the morning if we had two different time zones. Janu Barua and others have demanded for a long time that Northeast should have a different time zone. And so all these things came to my mind. That's why my phrase of "as the midnight hour approaches," all those things. And I also thought, this could be a speech where, in my part of the world, India's Northeast and Manipur, this should be like a tryst with destiny speech kind of thing, an independence from the marginal existence, independence from the peripherality of our existence, and reclaim our position as a citizen of the country. I should deliver that kind of a speech is what I thought. So I accepted. No regret, and I utilized whatever time allotted to me.
Even though the house was empty at midnight, everybody in Manipur was watching, and subsequently everybody in the country has seen your speech. So to that extent, you fought that marginality very effectively. But how important was it for you to be non-partisan in your speech? And by that, I mean, you were speaking on behalf of the people of Manipur. So did you abandon two hats, your Congress hat and the fact that you are from the Meitei community? How important was it for you to represent all the people of Manipur, even those who vote BJP, even those who are members of the Kuki community?
Varka, if you track my speeches in public forum right from the day one, I think when I spoke out on the national media, I think it was in the print the first time, I maintained positions that I am not neutral. I am for a united Manipur, where every community, every citizen can live a life of dignity and well-being. And my target right from the day one has been the abject failure of the state to rein in the violence, and also assert against the barrage of disinformation that have flooded the social network and the national media as such. And I have been against the kind of narrative where one community has been presented as the sole victim and another community as the villain and sort of kind of things. Just as the partition of 1947, one must realize that there are victims and perpetrators of violence on both sides of the communities. In that kind of a position I have maintained, and I'm quite assertive about the twisted narrative where one community has been presented as if it is the villain, and forgetting the basic things, that the failure of the state, even the communal narrative of branding a government as this or that. Say, take for example, Biren Singh government has cabinet ministers from Kuki, and they have never resigned throughout this crisis. They have not done as yet. And I am aware that they have been clearing their files from different places. And how did you brand that kind of a government as a Meitei government? And these people should have resigned, and then the narrative would have been much more clearer. So there are biased narratives. But as I said, I'm not neutral. My position is for United Manipur, and I'm against any kind of false narrative. You can check it. I have been at the receiving end of this propagandist disinformation statement made by a colleague of mine in JNU, who happens to be a Manipuri, who was attributed to me and, twisting my words. That's been going on. But that's how I spoke, and I was trying to locate this crisis in the silence of the government. And that's what I said, like in Hegelian sense, people without history, Europe has history, rest of the world doesn't have. And India was not a historical subject, it was an anthropological subject. That's how the nationalist struggle have recovered ourselves, become visible. Like that, I was trying to frame how the Northeast has been, to locate how do we understand the silence of the government of India. That's the position that I take. So it's not a question of representing this or that community, as my position has been primarily, my concern has been the abject failure of the state.
Yeah, you in your speech you said that you made this point about nationalism, that to forget Manipur and then say we are nationalists. To forget Manipur and then talk about nationalism is no nationalism at all. If you could speak to that part of your speech.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I have worked on this for a long, long time, in the nature of nationalism in South Asia, for instance. Take, for instance, Tagore, whom we call the national poet, was very skeptical of the very idea of nation. If you look at the work of Ashish Nandi, for example, he says this idea of nation state is an alien concept that came riding piggyback on Western imperial colonial expansion. There is certain alienness about this, and they said that Tagore have never translated this word nation into any of the Indian languages, including his mother tongue Bengali, just to note, to mark that this is an alien concept. So I have been a student of social sciences for a long time, so I'm aware. So just as this nationalist project, what are the parameters through which this nationalist narrative of India was written, how Northeast has become the other in the whole process has been part of my academic work and my articulation. And Prime Minister's conduct is a concrete manifestation of that exclusion of the Northeast as the other in the imagination of the Indian nation state. And that's what I was emphasizing there. It's not only about Manipur, but the Northeast in general. And I think that's how I understand his silence. So I was asking, the day when this nationalist party like BJP owns up in conduct, in deeds and words, And then I will accept what is nationalism that they are talking about. It. I wanted to show them this. I'm showing the mirror to them to see what kind of nationalism that they are propagating. And how this absence of Manipur. Barkha, there's Ralph Ellishon's work on the invisible men, how the blacks were invisible, and how in feminist narrative, how women's is invisible in social theory. So the Northeast is the invisible. In fact, you can see some of the response is so patronizing that we have given Mary Kom this, we have given that, this patronizing attitude. Oh, they are fighting among themselves and you are blaming Modi ji and all that. This is exactly what the colonial people have done, the Muslims and Hindus. This is a peculiar character of these non-Europeans, South Asian character. This is inherent in them, that the Hindus and Muslim, it is inherent antagonism that exists without realizing that the antagonism between the two communities was created by the colonial narrative and their political structures and economy. And in a similar kind of thing, this ethnic conflict in the Northeast, I truly believe that it is a product of the Indian state and its nationalist project and the conduct of the practices of the Indian state. It is not inherent in the Northeast. That kind of thing, I can get to see. Mary Kom wrote a letter appealing to the Prime Minister to take care of this long time back. And they are just as a patronizing tone. And one was saying that my so-and-so was shot, as if none of the Manipurese officers, police officers, including my own brother, what is Shaheed and Mater and all that. That is completely unacceptable, but it reveals the deep-seated, sort of a coloniality, like Partho Chatterjee's, Asis Nandi's, and hordes of scholars said there's a continuity between the colonial and the post-colonial in this part of the world. And in fact, look at this government trying to change our criminal laws, trying to sort of, remove this colonial heritage. But
the colonial, the colonial hangover that you speak about, why do you believe the Congress would be any different? This is structural, lingering colonialism built into the structures of power.
Let me come back to that. That is why at least the Congress party, my party, has that kind of a consciousness, and they want to talk about Manipur. See, we are changing slowly. It takes time. And Congress today remember Rahulji's statement that India is a union of states. It is the coming together of Tamils, the Marathas, the Punjabis, the Bengalis, the Assamese, Manipuris. That's what this nation is. This coming together, as Rahulji once said on the floor of the House, he said that India is a union of states. But without these states, there is no India. If there is no Tamils, there is no Bengalis, there is no Manipuris, what is India? We come together to form this country, and then in the process, you are just marking out a particular state as if it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. 60,000 Barkha homeless. Have you ever heard this? Have you ever heard like this? And in fact, one of the journalists in the national media, I turned a question in course of an interview. I said, do you think that this violence would have been allowed to linger on for so long had it been somewhere in UP, Bihar, Rajasthan, the so-called mainstream? He started shaking his hand and then he's shaking his hand and said, no, it would not. I said, you must ask why it was allowed in India's northeast in Manipur. And the Prime Minister there to talk about it for 14 months.
I'm going to come to the Prime Minister in just a moment because he did speak finally, and I want to know what you thought about that. But you, in your speech, called yourself a nobody. You said a nobody like me. Because of the hurt and anguish among my people, a nobody like me has won this election. Why did you call yourself a nobody, A? B, why did you, JNU professor, academic, decide to contest an election?
That's I think I've shared with you before also. I was forced. I'm looking at it and looking at the kind of politics, people trying to take mileage out of this conflict and the people who are, I don't know. I felt bad about many things and the silence of the government and the behavior of our politicians. And I said, democracy is about citizens, ordinary people like you and me. And I think, why shouldn't I join? It's the people, and as such, I have been speaking out, all my life. I have been in Noam Chomsky's word, intellectual speaking truth to the power, and that's what I have been doing. Writing articles in media, running columns, speaking in public meetings, and also it's my activities is not confined to classroom and supervising PhD scholars only. I do contribute in public spheres in media, and I work with a lot of people on the grassroots level, not only in Manipur but in the rest of the country as well. So I said, why shouldn't people like me also reclaim our space as citizens? That's why it is painful. I think I've told you in one of our conversation. I love my profession. It's in my bone marrow. Talking hours with my students on a range of issues, from human sexuality to gender issues to cultures, to cinema, and ethnic conflict in various parts of the world, and theorizing about things. That's something it is ingrained in me for 40 years almost now. So it's a painful decision, but I have to prioritize. This is a historical responsibility that I had to take up, and as it would have it, now that I won the election, and I will
Why
be
did you
taking
call
part.
yourself a Why did you call yourself a nobody? Why did you call
That's
yourself a nobody?
Oh, this is the wall of celebrities. You don't get offended. You're a celebrity, and politicians are powerful people. And people like me are ordinary teacher teaching and confined with our students in the cabin and the classrooms. Ordinary people like me. So I'm a nobody, but just burst into this political sphere, and people were behind me. This is an unprecedented victory. Many
I,
people are
I
saying that it will never happen again in Manipur, that such a margin. We remember that ours is a very small constituencies, barely around 10 lakhs electorates. And I got almost like 47% of the entire vote, and is one lakh, almost 10,000 ahead of the BJP, who's out of 32 assembly segment, 29 of them, they have their MLAs and supporters. Only 3 are Congress. Yet we managed to win. That shows I am part of the spirit of that people. This is truly a victory of the people of this state. It's not my victory.
Yeah. The Prime Minister spoke for 5 minutes and some seconds in the Rajya Sabha a day after your midnight speech, and the opposition chanting Manipur, Manipur, Manipur throughout his Lok Sabha speech. He made a couple of points. He said there are continuous attempts on to restore peace. He said there have been 11,000 FIRs, hundreds of arrests. Schools and colleges are open like normal in many parts of Manipur. Every day we are making this attempt. The opposition is politicizing it. It's adding fuel to fire. The fact that the Prime Minister spoke finally, A, what did you think of that? B, what did you think of the argument he made that the opposition is politicizing it? A large part of Manipur is now better than it was a year ago.
I think, many of these speeches are familiar. It almost echoes the statement of people here back in Imphal, the dispensation. They love to preach that kind of thing, but it is absolutely in contrast to what is on the ground. Take, for example, he's saying the offices are working, school colleges are working. Do you know that the state is practically like 2 different countries? Cookies don't attain office in Imphal or in areas in the Central Valley. Meiteis don't attain office in Churachandpur, for example. Meiteis don't attend Churachandpur Medical College. So do these Kuki students can't come to Manipur University or medical institutes in Imphal. And he's claiming that these are normal. Is this normal that student can't attend classes? And you said college are. This is nothing but normalizing the abnormal condition. You see, and there are so many thousands of students have been dislocated, and they're in the relief camps. And you think that this is normal. And firing has happened, day before yesterday, and Jiribam is still boiling, and he says violence has been normal. This is nothing but camouflaging the truth. So I think it's very unfortunate that he is misleading the people of the state. I wish that there is a little bit of honesty and genuine desire. That's what I said. If you have the Raj Dharma, one should have been a little more honest and confront, then I'm sure that people of the state and person like me will cooperate, and we try to bring back normalcy in the state. And actually, they are doing politics over this tragedy, not Congress. Congress is voicing the suppressed voice of the people. But they are doing politics. And by accusing Congress of doing politics of theirs, I think he's doing what the psychoanalysts call projection. It's nothing, and he's threatening that people will reject one day. BJP has been rejected in this election. Despite their muscle power, they tried all kinds of things. The people have rejected BJP. They should realize this.
Can I ask you? Obviously, when the violence was at its peak, the Meitei-dominated areas, there was a de facto division between the Meitei areas and the Kuki areas. You said today that the state is practically like two different nations, two different states. There's no actual formal division, but there's a de facto division. Does it continue to be as sharp as it was at the height of the violence? Or could you today, as a Meitei, go into a Kuki area? Could you go to Churachandpur? Could someone from Churachandpur come to Imphal?
You can't.
You Bimol could not go to Churachandpur today?
I cannot. And this is asked Prime Minister, and is this normal? Is this what you call normal? What happens to Article 19? Movement of citizens should have this free movement. And the national highway.
And they wouldn't come to your, Kukis wouldn't come to Meitei areas either.
Come, and that's what the BJP government saying, that sab changa hai, everything is hanky-dory, is normal. Is this normal? I'm saying it. Is this normal? 60,000 people linguisting in wretched conditions. Whatever case histories that I have read during my association with the Partition Project, it is exactly the same thing that I see. The humiliation. That's what I said. Violence is not an event. It is a process. There has been an everyday forms of violence. Women, newly married people, back in a small place with father-in-law, brother-in-law, taking bath in the open. This is something that I have read in case studies on partition experience and how traumatic that experience is. And then people are going through right now. And Indian state is allowing this thing to happen. In fact, I would even dare that they are the population, and once they shifted it right under the nose of their administration, this have been flattened out. How is it that they stay? And Barkha, just allow me to say this. You were also an experienced journalist. Please think about this. Manipur is one of the most militarized states in this country. Within the police system also, remember that armed police is normally less than 10% in the rest of the states, except for very few. In Manipur, you have more armed policemen than the civil police. Besides this, you have thousands of regular army, paramilitary forces, and central police organization. Each and every square centimeter is covered by these troops. And yet, 60,000 people lost their homes. 200 plus people got slaughtered. People can't move freely. And it is besides the Armed Forces Special Power Act, you remember to maintain so-called law and order in the aid of civil authority. And then besides that, you have this CRPC 131, where the army units are supposed to respond to public disorder to protect life and property of people, even without the permission of the civil authority. Despite all these things, you must ask this question: how come 60,000 plus people have lost their homes? How come 200 people were slaughtered? Is this 11,000, FIR is going to answer that question? It's an abject failure of these troops. Who's going to fix this accountability? How did this unit allow things to be destroyed in front of them? This army deployment.
But,
How come
but
the
in the
places
end, but in the end, you need state intervention. The troops are only following orders, right? The state has to respond. It has to be a political.
No. That is true. But at the same time, you can't escape. The lane gives the unit commander to act under CRPC 131 and under APSPA promulgated area. They have already got the order from the government. What do you mean by that we don't get the order? This is one thing that every army commanders and officers of the Central Police Organization, just as the SPs and the DSPs, there's IPS officers and the MPS officers, all must be held accountable. Besides the political masters, the political executive, who have allowed this thing to happen, and it's still refused.
So you and I have often, you and I have often spoken.
I'm just saying, let's not do. It's not even a blame game. I'm simply asking a constitutional questions. When the APSPA has already imposed, means that the government, the political executive, has given you the power to act. CRPC 131 has allowed you to act. How is it the police officers, these responsible police officers, or the army officers, or they couldn't act where the order is already there in written form? Armed Forces Special Power Act, CRPC 131. Over and above that, what I'm saying is that a very, very, dedicated officers would know my questions, what I meant. But this doesn't mean that our political executive, they also have to take the responsibility, far more greater responsibility than those officers, because they have allowed this to go on and not even talked about it.
I was just saying, you and I have often spoken about the dangers of the fact that both the police and the military in different parts of Manipur, their authority is being challenged by people. And depending on which part of Manipur you go to, either the police is being challenged or the army is being challenged. Now, my question to you in the end is this, Bimol. What next? Every few months we hear Biren Singh may resign. That doesn't happen. The Prime Minister says attempts are on. We are trying. What is the next step? What is needed now? What is immediately needed?
Yeah, I think the first thing first, I wish that there is a joint parliamentary committee to investigate this violence. And this is against the constitutional mandate. It is against the spirit of this country. So I think, no less than a joint parliamentary committee, I wish, must be formed to investigate it and fix accountability for this violence. A partition-like violence that have been allowed against our own citizens of this country. And I think the government should come clean. See, sometimes they said narco-terrorism, the state government says, then the Home Minister said it has nothing to do with terrorism. And the government says again that this is a fight between communities. And then another government says that this is not a fight between communities, it is between foreign elements and the state government, Indian state and the foreign elements. What is the truth? You create, this is, if I remember correctly, it is Chanakya once said, if you cannot convince people, then make them confused. That is exactly what they're doing. In this confusion, they are trying to hide their abject failure. And I think that the government should come up, clarity, what is this issue? I think these two things is what I think is needed. And I'm sure that once the Prime Minister showed a little bit of an iota of honesty and desire to solve it and said, no, now kya karna hai? Hum log kya kar sakta hai? Let's sit down together. I think people like me, and all of us will come down and say, okay, let's do. But remember that executive power is with the ruling party, not with the Congress. The initiative must come from them. And not this denial and making confusing statements, contradictory statement. And that should not be allowed.
I want to close with asking you, when you got up to speak in Parliament, you felt the weight of marginality, and you converted that marginality into a big moment. For the rest of the country that doesn't pay attention to your home state, that doesn't follow it every day, that, it falls off the headlines. It's back now because people like you have put it there. Parliament has finally put it back on the headlines. What would you like to say to the rest of India that isn't following anymore what's happening in Manipur?
When you sing national anthem and others, this should not be reduced to a ritual. There should be in our deeds, in our words, in our hearts and minds. One should feel the pain of the people in this part of the world. I think that is something, and seek out the truth. We all have prejudices. And besides, the power that be has not allowed people to be aware of what's going on. And I think people like you, everybody should play our own roles. And for instance, as an MP, don't expect me to speak only about Manipur or Northeast. Just as I have done before, partaking in the national affair is part of my responsibilities and duties. So I think each one of us should do our own job to take care of ourselves. And by excluding from the hour, the idea of the hour and Manipur as if it's far off places, something happening, that should not be allowed by the media and civil society in general in this country. And I'm sure that once we are awakened to that level, however powerful the government may be, however reluctant the politicians are, incidentally, now that I have also become a politician, I'm sure that politicians will act, and I'm hoping that I'll also do my bits that as a new member of this class of people, I'll try to remind constantly that, and we must respond. And hopefully,
I think to borrow from academia, the politicians are going to ask you to not other them now. Now that now you're one of them.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bimol. Take care, and thank you for that address in Parliament that put Manipur back on the national consciousness. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Take care.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.